All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition, the final edition of the Takedown Breakdown this season with my guy Nades. Bring him in here in a minute, but we appreciate you guys watching all season long. Hopefully this has helped you get a little bit better, think about DFS a little bit differently, and we'll have more on that in a little bit. But Nades, I'll bring you in. Week 17, PGA is back. It's close to New Year's, all that. And then week 18, we've never done was sort of the mess, but this will be the last episode. How you doing, my friend? And thank you so much for joining me all season long. It's been a fun one.
Yeah, I always love doing the show. Big part of my process, big part of your process, and obviously we've worked together for a couple of years now, and it's been great. So I appreciate you bringing me on. But happy holidays, everyone out there. With that, obviously this is the last show, like you alluded to, just due to the holiday season. And then week 18 is kind of a mess, right? With people sitting guys and things like that. Same with 17. So I think we can pull some stuff from yesterday, and overall learn from it and use our tools, I think, to kind of discuss through it like we've done kind of all season long, right? Which is kind of the nature of the game and the reason why it kind of pays to be SHIPIT Nation subscribers over here. These tools that we have are kind of game changing in this industry, and it's not just us coming on here and touting it. We showcase them for a reason, and I think our members have definitely shown success all season long, right? So I think that's the beauty of it, doing these shows. Yeah.
That's what I was talking about too. And this is funny, Mark put this in here. We'll get to it. I know this is a big topic this week of that winning lineup for the $20 Millie Maker. That's kind of week 18-esque, right? So maybe there's some takeaways from that, but you'll see a lot of the lineups that were up there and close. I'm also going to announce the winner of the $3,333 ticket, DFSmastermind.com, sponsored by SHIPIT Nation. Of course, this is the platform to talk about that on. So we have the winner for that. I'll get to it here in a little bit. But if you saw my ex at ToeTagginTambo, you could see Sam Jeffcoat. This was an incredible story. Exactly what my vision was for all of this. We're going to showcase the tools again. The stone over at SHIPIT Nation was on point. The stack rankings, the highest stack ranking I've ever seen. Sure enough, it worked out on a lot of winners, including the 555 Millie Maker winner. It wasn't on the $20, but we'll get to that. But pairing the tools, and then if you want to, you're watching this, you want to take your game a little bit further. He even had a one-on-one call with me being in the first 50 over at DFSmastermind.com. And we talked about, laser focus, winning the $12 single entry. And in less than 2 weeks, he goes out and gets the job done and ships it. So just incredible. It says in the clip, nobody can guarantee you success. But I think when you marry together SHIPIT Nation, tools, data, all the stuff that we provide with some additional training, review, application for training content when it comes to DFSmastermind.com, that is the winning combo. So we'll get to it. Shout out to everybody here in the chat. Sean Sullivan, traveling for Christmas. Yeah, Merry Shipmas and Happy Holidays to everybody out there. You guys know that. Coach Sav, I saw you just put a review in. I don't think we'll get to it because it was the late bloomer, but appreciate you, and maybe I can hit you up in a DM or something. Shout out to all the people that are usually here joining us. Andrew, Philly Phantom, Newens, GK Pfeiffer, Shep, hashtag SHIPIT. He's in the bunch getting ready for golf. And more on that as well. Some PGA stuff coming up. Matt Taylor, Michael, just all good people here in the chat. And we'll talk about this, how to use the stone. We do talk about that quite a bit, but we'll show you here right on this very show, actually. So let's get to it. Let's hop in here and go over and check out, first off, this $20 Millie Maker that everybody wants to talk about, right? This is the one, Nade. So, let me get to the perfect lineup here first. Just 1 second. Pull this up. Two-man booth. They changed the settings on this thing here. Before we get to
around, they swapped them.
Yeah, they just swapped them around a little bit, but hey, we're all good. People trust us here. They know we're going to go through the goods for them. So let's do this. Let's go pull up the perfect lineup. Just of note, I think you see it up there now. The winning $20 Millie Maker lineup was 238.48. This is 40 points higher, basically, at 278, a $49,800 salary lineup. I'll kick it to you, Nades. Olamide, how do you say his name again? Zacchaeus?
Zacchaeus, I think. Right?
Yes, Zacchaeus, that's what it is. But yeah,
hey, you're usually doing pretty good asking me for pronunciations, because anybody out there that knows the NHL shows and that knows I'm horrible with those. So I can't get on anybody for pronunciations. But yeah, this build here, there is a couple things that I can pull from it. Number one, Jonathan Taylor, not results oriented, but who was chalk on the slate? Anthony Richardson, right? So going to the running back on the same team with, hey, if Anthony Richardson isn't getting those rushing touchdowns at the goal line, which he even did himself, it's likely Jonathan Taylor probably is in a decent spot, right, to get some of those, or at least some running back from that team. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor being the one there. Chuba Hubbard, amazing game environment, great game script independent, right, involved in the rushing, involved in the passing. He did get there, obviously, kind of got all the way there, right, in overtime. I know that helped a lot of people in our Discord there. Amazing play. Really wasn't anything crazy there. Everybody was on that Detroit and Chicago game. How does the game speed up? You talk about this all the time, right? Jameson Williams, bomb down the sidelines, right? What do you have? Like an 80-yard bomb, right? He instantly speeds up the game. Keenan Allen has taken over wide receiver one in this offense. I mean, Caleb Williams, dude, just looks to Keenan Allen every single time. I mean, look at his target share. He's got 11, 12, and like 14 targets the last 3 games, right? And he was also sandwiched between Rome Odunze and DJ Moore at less ownership than what like DJ Moore was. So that was a good play, a little secondary stack there. And then Devin Achane, a chain or however. I mean,
Achane. Yeah, we are getting in the pronunciation game now. Go ahead.
Yeah, Achane. Yeah. 7,400, right? He was, I think he was a pretty good play. Not to say that you would have got to him, but there was a lot of very popular running backs in that range, $100 less than Jahmyr Gibbs on the same when you have Jameson Williams. So you can pull a couple things. Obviously, anytime a perfect lineup outscores the optimal, if you will, right, in the $20 contest or any of these tournaments by 40-plus points, you know, it's some plays like Zacchaeus, right, and things like that are going to fall in there, Chig, stuff like that. But there's some good plays you can pull from here. And then obviously the Falcons D in that game there, where most people just saw the Falcons kind of just destroying that team. Falcons D and Bijan was a pretty popular combination yesterday.
Yeah, so to me, the interesting part is this is probably, funny enough, it's the last week of doing the show, but this might be the best perfect lineup we've seen all season. And maybe it's just because I've been looking at so many lineup reviews and breaking things down with people lately. But I will say, it's not that you were going to this game, but I even mentioned like Josh Allen and Mac Hollins yesterday, and I didn't like Mac Hollins. It's not about if it worked out or not. I'm saying, but if you're pairing a more expensive quarterback with somebody random, fine. But even the benefit of the doubt, because who's getting to this? Nobody. Just plug in Malik Washington in a combo pack with Achane for the $200 more. You lose what, 20-something points? I think he only had like 4 or 5. But my point being, you get something and you still win the Millie Maker. But the takeaway would be this: if you were just playing somebody like Jaden Daniels up top, you had no Richardson, who was popular, so the leverage would be Jonathan Taylor. Chig was going to be a pivot off of Strange that fits the secondary stack, and we could see an opportunity for him. So that's a little secondary stack. If you're not, this was like a double entendre here, but if you're not playing Gibbs and you're using Williams to speed it up with Keenan Allen on the other side, and I'll go more on that in a second, that's a secondary stack. But it actually makes sense for when I'm explaining to people or when we're talking through it on this show, is if you're going to do something like this, that means you're not playing Gibbs in this spot. And if you're not playing Gibbs in this spot, that's $100 less to go to the pivot in Achane. I said it yesterday. I said he might score, 20 to 25 and then see somebody like Achane score more. And then you'll never know who's going to be needed, but we know way less people would be on Achane. I think Gibbs got 28 yesterday, had a really good day. So as expected, by the way, and we'll go to the stone. Somebody asked earlier about how to use that over at SHIPIT Nation. We'll show it off. But just saying, if you were getting to Jaden Daniels or something in that Washington-Philly game, which was always going to be potential, you can even cancel out the Zacchaeus play and just put Malik Washington in a combo pack with Achane. You're not on Penix, but you see they got a total there. Why not just play the defense? You're not on DJ Moore, but you're on Keenan Allen. Instead of playing Gibbs, you do Achane and Williams and mix them together. And I will say the last thing on this, Nades, I like Keenan Allen. I talked about this directly on the show yesterday, way better as a one-off or secondary stack than I did with DJ Moore, because I feel like DJ Moore is going to be a big-time 2-touchdown type of game where when you're going to need him, and that's really going to boost Caleb Williams even more than we already liked him. And obviously that's why he fell into things like our stack rankings over at SHIPIT Nation. I don't know if you have more to add on that, but this is what I said yesterday. The highest stack ranking. I've never even seen it in the 9s for our whole season. And this is from yesterday. And basically Williams, Moore, Allen right at the top.
Yeah, no, I like that point a lot because DJ Moore, I mean, the way this Bears offense is working kind of since week 12, right, when Keenan Allen kind of really came back, right? I mean, he was dealing with injuries and stuff like that at the beginning of the season. So it took him a little bit, right, to get acclimated to this offense. Obviously, it's a new addition, and it's a young quarterback there. And Keenan Allen was a beast in his career. You look at week 12, I mean, this dude's averaged double-digit targets since week 12, right? And so to your point, that fits DraftKings scoring perfectly, right? PPR monster. Whereas DJ Moore is kind of like your DK Metcalf or like your Jamar Chase example, right? Where typically that guy is going to pull the quarterback with him, right? So I like that take a lot. But yeah, the stack rankings was all over this game. And it really, I mean, ownership wise, it really wasn't that crazy, to be honest. I mean, it was kind of the nature of the slate yesterday. There was a ton of wide receivers in that kind of mid-tier range and then a lot of cheap quarterbacks, right? To overall kind of spread the ownership with guys like Penix and Aiden O'Connell and Anthony Richardson. But if you look, I mean, the top 10, if you just stuck to the top 10 or 12, right, on our stack rankings, you probably had a pretty dang good day yesterday if you just had these guys in your pool and had decent exposures on them. And it just goes back to our tools. And when we flip over the stone in a little bit, you'll see even more on how to kind of use the stone and see that everything is on the stone, which is kind of why it's the best tool in all of DFS. Obviously, we have the stack rankings and things like that split off as one-offs, but it's all incorporated in the stone as well. So yeah, I like that point a lot on Keenan Allen.
Yeah, the Darnold doubles yesterday, and then you see the Sanford, you see Seattle game up here. So sometimes that you saw Josh Downs, you saw Brian Thomas Jr., you saw Kittle, Chig popped up there. If you were looking for we'll see later how some people got different in some spots, but Penix was up there, Bowers was up there. If you weren't on, we always talk about this, even when you're looking for building out your lineups, like we talk about just not, if this is your stack, you most likely ended up on Gibbs. And I wouldn't blame you. I know that you can go down the board and say, oh, where is he? Oh, Williams is way down there on the stack. That's fine. But you could see how you could land on him or Laporta if you were looking to get different with this stack. But you also didn't necessarily have to get different here. There was other places to go. But we talk about using these tools all the time. I've got a NFL process video coming up this week at dfsmastermind.com showing how I use this stuff. But just a tidbit of it, like you mentioned, Nades, if I'm on this and it makes sense to pair this with Gibbs, and I'm not on this, but Kyler pops everywhere, I'm probably putting in James Conner, like just an example, or I might be interested in the defense against Kyler Murray, for example. If I'm not on some of this stuff, I'll look into it. If I'm not going to be on these guys, maybe I'm on the defense for or against, because then I'm just picking up those points in a different way. What would cause these guys not to get there? Well, if their defense scores a bunch and controls the game, that's possible. If the defense against them, if you wanted a cheaper D to make everything else fit and fit in some other stuff. So you can look at a lot of this stuff. Where do you get secondary stacks from? People who know my slate plan from this past week. Oh, I like Bijan Robinson and Neighbors. It did not fully work out because Neighbors didn't fully work out, but just saying, like, if you're seeing these things, interesting game stack. Wow, Minnesota and Seattle are both still up here. Tennessee and Indy are both up here. Rudolph was in the mix for a little while. We're close to Christmas. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. You get in Rudolph with Ridley, Okonkwo, and then you can put in a Downs or a Jonathan Taylor, who you might not be on. If you're not on Richardson, maybe that's why you're putting Taylor in. And if you're not on Richardson, because he was popular, but because you like quarterbacks up here instead, then you probably should like Jonathan Taylor at $6,900 or $7,700 on FanDuel. So this is where you can pull a lot of this stuff from. It's not even results oriented as much as to give yourself ideas. It's all just a piece of the puzzle. We have a ton of content over here for the main slate showdown. We fully cover DFS. Tons of different sites out there cover different things. Our focus is daily fantasy. Talk about our guy, Sam Jeffcoat, laser focus. That's what we do when it comes to DFS. We're dialed in. Shout out to our guy, DGen, the sweaty tryhard mantra. Everybody on the team and behind the scenes, this is what we're doing, is we're putting in the work on this stuff to give you the best tools possible, most valuable at the most affordable price. Do want to remind everyone, we brought it up again yesterday, but a couple things. One, if you still want to get in, you can use BF50. That gets you 50% off your first month all access. So $34.50 for a month or $49.50 if you want to try out the optimizer. If you want the rest of the NFL football season, that's there. But today seems like a good day to talk about it. I talked about this being the last show. PGA starts next week. I know it's the holidays, Christmas for some. Everybody celebrates their own holidays. We appreciate that and support and wish everybody a happy holidays. But the thing is, as soon as holidays end, PGA starts. The Century picks up next week. We'll have coverage. I know DJen's doing a show next week. I'm doing a show with him. There's going to be Hoop and I coming back doing the golf shows. But if you are planning on signing up for PGA DFS, there is no better site. There is no better price. This is the thing. It's $100 off. So $299 for the season. It shows $399, but you get it for $299. It's $349. Shows $449, but you get it for $349 if you want to get in for the PGA season, and it's annual. So it gets you till this time next year. I mean, you get every single event leading through till next year. And then a couple bonuses. It is the holiday season, so the gift that keeps on giving, free all access through Super Bowl 59. So again, remember this. You get free all access. That is NFL, the rest of college football, the NBA, NHL streets are wide open, MMA coming back shortly, so on and so forth through the Super Bowl, which is not till February. It's the end of December. So if you're going to treat yourself, get yourself a little gift, go to the site, click Join the Nation, go under Single Sport, and you'll be able to find it there. It's right here. Scroll down on the site, click Join the Nation, go to Single Sport. This will come up at $299. This will come up at $349. And then you will not only get the entire golf season when it gets rolling next week, but you will get the all access through Super Bowl. And then you'll also get maybe another bonus that's coming. I'm just going to tease it. I'm not going to go there fully, but we got a lot of good things coming down the pipeline. Nades, the stone real quick, just to go back to this, and we'll flip back and forth once we get into the lineup review because people do want to see that. But just to note, target game in purple. Looking. Oh, target game, which again, people say, oh, everybody knew that. Then build it. Why didn't everybody build it then? I mean, that's what we're saying. And you look at it here, the optimal rates, the highest you'll see, but Caleb Williams, Moore, Allen. Allen in turquoise was a high upside. If you go back down and look, it was similar ownership projected, but if you wanted to save that money, I have no problem ever saving the money and going to a high upside play. You knew this optimal rate. On the other side, you knew this stack rate. A very good place to start your lineups and to put yourself in a pretty successful position was Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and run it back with Gibbs. If you're not on Kyler, why not something like James Conner? If you're not going to be on Anthony Richardson, who was reflecting, he actually ended up coming in at like 8 or 9, I think. But just a note, if you thought he was going to be higher, why not $6,900 with huge leverage? I think we nailed that. I think he did come in at 8% for Jonathan Taylor, 23-point team total at home. Not the worst, not the best matchup, but it's just pure leverage built into the lineup. A lot of the ways you can use the stone are to find these angles of attack and then go use something like Shiptimizer, where you can use the hand build feature and start putting this in and seeing how it all plays out. So I don't know if you have anything to add, Nades. You brought it up earlier and someone wanted to look at how you can use the stone. Target game, stack ranking, very optimal, most optimal play on the slate, run back. And then where else do you go? Very optimal running back. You're not on Kyler. Very optimal running back. You're not on Richards. I mean, the thing starts to build itself at that point. But give me some thoughts, man. What do you got?
Yeah, not only that, I mean, the Jonathan Taylor play too. I mean, you know, HN, right? 7,400, but you know Gibbs, right? Going to be the chalkiest running back on the slate. James Conner, second highest owned running back on the slate. So you just know Jonathan Taylor at a couple $100 more. I mean, 6,900 versus 71. Everybody's clicking James Conner in the matchup yesterday over Jonathan Taylor because everybody wanted Anthony Richardson. So that was another point. But yeah, you alluded to it. If you literally just stick to the target games, right, or the sneaky games on these stones throughout the course of the season and just play the good games. DJ talks about it all the time. Play the good game environments. If you're only playing a couple teams, you go in on these good game environments. Is it going to work every time? No, absolutely not. That's the game we play, right? There's variance in every sport you play. But more times than not, these games are tagged these these reasons are ways for a reason. And these players are highlighted for a reason. There's a lot of work that goes into creating the stone every week, projections and ownership and everything behind the scenes that tabulates this. If you just stuck to it over the course of the season, I'd be willing to bet you're a profitable DFS player this season, just using this tool alone. And I mean, you see it on the Nation Celebration, right? Guys turning massive ROIs. It's not 150 maxers that we're touting out there that, oh, this guy won again. There's guys that are literally turning $60 into 6,000, right? $70 into to thousands, right? So overall, I mean, amazing breakdown there, but that's kind of how to use it. Just look for the target games first, go there. Okay. What's the field doing? How can I get different within this target game? And then just plug in good plays around it. And you have yourself a very competitive lineup. Is it going to win every day? No, but are you going to give yourself a shot to win? Going back to your process, right? That at least gives you a starting point, right? To create your process and stick with your process. So then, going into next week, okay, I know how my process works. I know where I'm going to look for. Then you listen to the content, you look through the slate plan, you look through the other content on the site, and you make your own tweaks. That's the best part about it. So,
the tool is designed to make it easier on you. I know everybody always talks about MME content versus I only play, 1 to 20 lineups. This is literally designed. You can actually download your own version of the file. The PDF is nice if you're on mobile to be able to see it. But the XLSX file you can download. I know, and I've talked to people over at DFS Mastermind about how they use this, and they download the file. They delete players from games. They delete games altogether. They take stuff off and narrow it down and then start to look up at the matchups and see, okay, what does this look like? Chase Brown looks pretty good, has a pretty good rush matchup. Let's look at that. Bijan this week. If I'm not playing Penix at high ownership, why wouldn't I like Bijan against a D+ rush defense, the Giants? He had a pretty good day. Could have been even better. He just missed the bonus, I think, by 6 yards. All of that and more, though, you can look at it and leverage that makes sense. You'll start to learn as you go on. But just mixing the tools, we have the stone for everything, right? Showdown, just this week alone, we've got a showdown slate tonight covering you here. We'll be back later on this channel with Hoop Title and myself. On tomorrow, Tuesday morning, Hoop and myself are doing a 2-game slate show for the Christmas Day slate with the Kansas City at Pittsburgh and Baltimore at Houston. Just looking off my calendar here. Thursday night, Nades and Ham will be back to cover the show on this channel for the Thursday night football game with Seattle and Chicago. And then Saturday, it'll be back 3-man booth, Hoop, Title, and myself for the 3-game staggered slate. So tons of good stuff going on across the board. We'll get to that $20 Millie Maker here and check it out, Nades. This was the one everybody's talking about. So, U of M 1506. How many lineups do you think they had in this tournament? You probably looked ahead, so I think it's more of a spoiler alert, but you can guess. Here's the answer. Spoiler alert. They had one. They had one lineup, and we'll talk about it. I mean, it's not going to be everybody's favorite lineup, most certainly, but let's talk about it and see what we can come up with, Nades. What do you got?
Yeah, so congrats to this guy out there, wherever they built, he or she, wherever they built this. I mean, anybody can say what they want about any lineup that wins $1 million is not a shit lineup. Ridiculous, right? Whether you have your takes or not. Is it the most correlated lineup that everybody builds? No, absolutely not, right? It's a bunch of one-offs. You see a bunch of X there, right, on the view lineup. I'll start with the Phoenix and the Atlanta D. I listened to the First Look show. DJN brought that up. Anytime you have a starting quarterback that has shown talent in the past at basically stone minimum, you can play him. You don't need to stack him. And it can easily be, he gets it going. There's London, there's Mooney, there's Bijan, there's Pitts, there's Ray, there's all these different guys. Maybe you just take the points from him and you just pair it up with the defense, make it a combo pack for what? A little over $8,000, right? And you move on. So I don't mind that there. Jonathan Taylor already talked about the leverage there. Great play. Chuba Hubbard already talked about that opposite side of James Conner in the same game. If that game script flips, it's probably because Chuba Hubbard has a pretty big day, even though he's involved in the receiving game too. But if he's smashing, it's probably likely that Arizona's throwing a little bit more, which kind of hurts. It hurts James Conner at least a little bit instead of if they're playing with the lead. So I like that. We already hit on the Keenan Allen play, right? Amazing option as a one-off on that same team. In respect to like the DJ Moore for cheaper. So I like that. The JSN play, really good matchup. Minnesota's defense has gotten torched by wide receivers all season long. So the thing that I pull, majority of this lineup is just playing good plays and not worrying about over correlating or stacking, which isn't the way you and I build, but it's not like he's playing random guys outside of maybe the Kashan Booty or Butte, or however you pronounce it, right? Everyone else was people were playing for the most part, right? And he just put them all together in the same build. So, I mean, outside of the New England piece, I think everything else kind of makes sense from the game environment standpoint.
Yeah, let me look this up real quick. I just want to see one quick thing. Yeah, where's the only guy I'm looking for is Booty. So check it out. What's the lineup here, Nades? We got the stone up. Let me see here. So he had Penix Jr., very optimal. He had the Falcons D, looking pretty good and huge ceiling here, just highlighted heavy, right? Still good leverage on the slate, another way to use it. We've seen plenty in the past where you pair running back with defense, and when you have a mobile quarterback or someone coming in that's super cheap like this, just combo packing it up, I got no problem with that. And it's, everyone's going to make fun of this lineup, and we're with you. But, just trying to make sense of it and just point some stuff out real quick. Running backs against each other. Not only has, the chat caught on to this, Chuba with whoever, because this matchup for both sides is so bad, has been a thing. Here's the matchups. First of all, an F. So throw in James Conner, also one of the most optimal running backs on the slate for our stuff. Same with Chuba Hubbard. All right, let me throw them in. Wait a minute. I'm on Penix, so I'm not playing Richardson. So we just talked about that. Why not plug in Jonathan Taylor? Green across the board. Looks pretty good. Who were the three wide receivers again? So Booty, Allen, and JSN?
Yeah.
So you go down here. Let me look real quick. We'll save Booty till the end, but just to look at it, JSN, and who was the other one?
Keenan Allen.
Keenan Allen. Fire across the board, even leverage. And you knew people were playing DJ Moore, high leverage, good. What's the other one? JSN?
Yep.
Boom. Crushing it. 25 ceiling, 12.5, only 6K. He'd been crushing it anyway. All that. So
pass defense too.
Pass defense, D+. Yeah, you see that one. We'd already talked about the Lions are C+ on paper, but have got worse recently. This has taken a little bit longer sample, so it's actually got worse. So I think that's fine. And then he's just the ultimate troll. He knows you guys want to make up values on slates when there's no value receivers and play Booty at 20%. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to own these guys. I'm playing Booty when there is no value at wide receiver at the same $3,500 price tag, but I'm doing it when there's no ownership on this guy, and I'm just throwing him in there to make it all work. So maybe
and you knew people were playing Hunter Henry, right? I mean, you knew people were playing if they were playing in New England. You knew if they were playing a New England piece, and you knew people were on Josh Allen. I mean, he wasn't super chalk, but people were on the Bills side heavy, whether it was James Cook, whether it was Kincaid or Shakir or Josh Allen, right? So why do people like that? There has to be some sort of scoring coming from the New England piece. I mean, unless Baltimore or Buffalo just goes out there and just lays a 50 spot on them, right? And just everybody smashes, kind of like the Lions did. So I don't think it's the craziest. Is it a lineup that everybody's going to build, and that's why all the takes are coming out, right? Like, oh my God, this lineup's horrible. But what I pull from it is you played good plays in good game environments and throw the Booty play out. I mean, you find another guy in there, like Malik Washington or something like that, right? That people are, he probably still, what did he win by 8 points?
He could have a 0. He could have taken a 0 at quarterback and won.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you can't shit on a lineup too much for anybody that throws in one lineup in 130,000 field and wins it, right?
I just want to say it though, because again, people always think I'm backing it up or whatever. Obviously, no Millie lineup is a bad lineup either way. People will say it's built bad, and I definitely look at lineup reviews probably more than most, so I get it. But I'm just trying to make a case that if he's throwing in one lineup, I've had this conversation so much lately about correlation being step one. Everybody thinks because you correlate, you win. They're like, but it was all correlated. It has to be a good lineup. They're not in, they're in all kinds of off the board places, lower owned things, you got to make 3 random things work. So even though you made correlations to make it like I was talking about, like a single game parlay, you need 3 or 4 things to happen as opposed to needing 9 random events to happen. But in the end, you have to kind of tie it all together. And while this didn't have a ton of correlation, the idea of the leverage spots, like once you have Penix, cut into them with the defense. If you're not playing Richardson, play Taylor. 2 good running back spots against each other. Most like both those spots, hence the ownership somewhat, but didn't want to play them against each other as often. A lot of people talking about DK Metcalf at 5,500. A lot of people talking about DJ Moore, which, by the way, if you go down to DK Metcalf, you can go up to DJ Moore. So it's just a little thing like that. You nailed it with the Hunter Henry thing. Again, it's random, but it just makes it work. A lot of people talking about Debo, Jennings, even Patrick Taylor Jr. in this spot. Is it crazy? Sure. But I will say it's probably one of the least crazy when you can kind of validate for it using even our tools like the Stone of some of the ones that people are like, just because it's not correlated, it doesn't count. there could be thought process put into this. Maybe there wasn't, and they just nailed it all. But a lot of these were the right places, the different pieces that people were in those same places. It just, they went to other spots within it. So take it for what it's worth. Try it if you want this upcoming week, week 17, week 18 to be perfect for something like this long-term and with a full portfolio. I'm not building like this, and that's fine. But I'm saying if you're playing less lineups and you want to just look at what something like this looks like, I think hopefully after that explanation, you can at least see some of what we're talking about to be able to link it up to that and just have a look from that perspective. Anything else, Nades, on that lineup before we go to the 555 Millie Maker winner?
No, we can jump over to 555.
So this is awesome. I actually would love to get Jay Gerbs on a interview over at DFS Mastermind, because Jay Gerbs, we've talked about like 3 times this season. Won the Millie Maker. Then we saw the week after, it was like, I think he lost 70 grand, but we showed like where he was, he had the money. Obviously, he was playing within his means, had some good results in other places to make up for those losses in the higher dollar, big risk events like this one. And then this week comes back and wins the Millie Maker again in the 555. So congrats to Jay Gerbs. This is awesome to see. I think this lineup is going to appease the people a lot more. This lineup to me just makes perfect sense. I love this build. And funny enough, though, this is what, back to your point, Chuba Hubbard, Keenan Allen, Debo and not Kittle, Hunter Henry and not Booty, Jonathan Taylor was on it in the same spot. Like a lot of this isn't that far off from what that other lineup just had. And then even in the other spots, it's in the same game, different spots, and he got same or better results. So just keep that in mind as you're going through, and just, before you're shitting on everything, think about these things as you're going through them. But Nades, I'll kick this one to you. Congrats again to Jay Gerbs. This is a really nice lineup here. And we'll go to his other one that was up in the mix as well in a second, because interestingly enough, if you didn't see it on the previous screen, I don't want to mess it up because sometimes this thing goes back and forth, but this same lineup, he did have it in. So he must have ran the same sets, because this lineup finished like 7th or 8th over in the $20 Millie Maker at 224 as well. But go ahead.
Yeah, I love this build. Obviously, the target game going back to Stone, right? The Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, all 3 highlighted, all good. Optimal is really good stack ranking, the best we've seen all season. To your point, easiest run back, right? Jahmyr Gibbs, best play on the slate yesterday. Everybody knew that. Didn't actually like smash, but it didn't matter. I mean, when 60% of the field is playing him, he's good. So I love that. Chuba Hubbard, already talked about it, opposite sides of James Conner. Obviously, James Conner had a good day too, but Chuba Hubbard had a better day at way lower ownership, right? In that exact same game, right? Talked about it. If that game script flips, it's likely Chuba Hubbard's having a big day, right? So I like that a lot. And the Deebo Samuel play I thought was great, because people wanted to try and figure out that running back situation in San Francisco with guys like Patrick Taylor, right? Who, mind you, was also 5,200. You already saw, they know they didn't. We've seen these guys on a showdown. They don't want Patrick Taylor. Patrick Taylor is more of like a gadget guy, right? He's not an every down back. We saw Deebo Samuel getting carries, literally running back carries. The last time we seen them on the showdown last week, right? 5,200 is the exact same team in the running spot. So I like that play a ton, the Deebo Samuel play. We already talked about the Hunter Henry there. Tight end, everybody was playing Strange, right? So you spend up a little bit more to Hunter Henry at a 1Z position with way less ownership. And then the Anthony Richardson. How does Anthony Richardson fail? Well, it's likely that the defense is doing decent, and then Jonathan Taylor's doing decent. Pair them both together, you leverage the field completely. So I love this build, amazing build, and really good portfolio in general.
Yeah, I just want to see something quick, like just looking at his ownerships here, like 170. I'm looking at total 202 he let in, but the product ownership is pretty light because 1, 2, 3, 4 lower owned plays. So just to see it, I was just looking at this real quick so you guys can see, but yeah, I love this lineup. I'll go through it on my end, but it was a 50K spend, 165% total. It still had 3 pretty low owned, 4 pretty low owned, 10% or less type plays. And then the other thing, that's like kind of the flip of the build, right? Like if you're starting Caleb, Moore, Allen, Gibbs, which we just showed on the Stone, you can go back over to it here again. You can go back to the rest of the lineup. If you're doing that, I think you're looking at where does my leverage come from next if I'm not on some of the other spots. Well, we already talked about it. Look at Chuba Hubbard here. coming in lower owned. We said it all week. I said it on the show with Hoop on the first look, and then it kept going as the week went on. I said there's just no way he's getting more ownership than Connor. And they both had good games. Hubbard got there in OT, but shout out to my fellow Canadian, Chuba Hubbard, getting the job done. So that'll be featured on all the commercials we have up here in Canada now. But good day for him, walking it off in overtime. But just to note, very solid play, very fair matchup. Everything was good there. If you're not playing, we've already talked about this one enough, but if you're not in on that, even the defense, the Colts, more popular to start the week, fell off a little, but a good, still leverage and good optimal rate. Leverage, good optimal rate. And then Hunter Henry was down the board as very, very strong. Solid for tight end position, optimal and with leverage to go with it. So I thought this build was pretty solid. You can't play everywhere. And I guess go back, let me just see quick on Debo too, right? I also was high on this. I said this one yesterday. We played DFS so long to know that Debo was just going to have a good game yesterday. It's the way it goes, the experience. I had a ton of them. I backed it up and played them like that, but didn't get them in the right positions, the right spots with the overall build. But just to note another one here, way less owned, 11% less owned with a very similar projection and really almost the exact same ceiling as Jennings. And then we knew there was other stuff that was hitting this spot up. And if you couldn't get to that, but just look, Patrick Taylor, not as high there, Debo there. So if playing it in flex, and I talked about that on the show as well, that would be a way to get to it. So congrats to Jay Gerbs. This was their other lineup, Nades, that finished up top was Caleb Williams, Moore, Allen, no run back. The trifecta of Cincy guys still hitting on that Taylor-Hubbard combination and Debo in the mix as well. What do you think of this one? I'll talk more on it in a second, but I'll kick it to you first. 49-7. And I don't know that there was really any late swap stuff. This was all early guys except for Debo, right? So just kick it back to you for a second and talk about this one.
Yeah, so all the same setup. I'll hit on the Cincinnati piece. People were trying to go to the Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase stuff, right? So if Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, who likely, if they're having big games, they're attached to each other. So if they're still scoring points, it's likely a onesie position, right? A guy like Gesicki who can get them down there or in the red zone, and Chase Brown. And then if those guys are doing it and Burrow and them are not smashing the slate, likely you just throw in the defense there because it's likely the defense is having a pretty big day. If in this spot yesterday that they were in, Cincinnati at home against Cleveland, right, the defense has to be involved. So I like that play, and then everything else we already hit on. So I did like that kind of combo pack there. 7,700 or 77, 77 and what 3,500 was it? Jamar Chase was 80. So it's a little bit more expensive for the combo pack. Those two.
Yeah, no, I like that. And that's the other thing I would say is like if it's not Chase, Higgins, et cetera, getting there, it's probably just going to be Chase Brown in the defense. But if you need a cheap way to add it in, and I'm pretty sure this game was in the morning, right? Like I have to go back. Yeah, it was the first game. I remember this now. So interestingly enough, leaving the Brenton Strange play out of this, right? With having the ability to do it for $200 more, no Gibbs, no Strange. So not even going after either of those spots. And again, it doesn't really matter because you made up for the leverage in other positions here. But just to note it, like that was interesting to me is that just said, this is pretty standard stuff. You'll see a running back DST stack, but then Gesicki plugging in as opposed to Strange. So now, because I can break it, if I do, just a quick breakdown. And we will have the 33-33 ticket for DFS Mastermind coming up here shortly. So just stay tuned, go through that in a minute with you. But he was high on Bryce Young. And this is the stuff we do over there, breaking it down further, review, and then how you can apply it. But going back and doing a deep dive, Bryce Young, Jaden Daniels, and then Caleb Williams just slightly over the field. He did in this 150 use the portfolio to play some one-offs of some other spots. Like I know it's not for everybody, but picking and choosing a couple other quarterbacks and you just put a few lineups in. That's just the way some people do it. And they have like the way to select their best lineup that they would want for this specific tournament. So lineup selection is a big thing that'll be coming up soon and I'll be talking about. So that's definitely a thought here. If you go to running back, under the field, but still at about 50% on Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think that's pretty fair. I was surprised. I thought maybe Gibbs would stay a little bit in check. I knew he'd be the most popular. I'm not saying that, but versus Hubbard the week before was like $1,000 less. And I thought it was going to be close to that situation, but I was having conversations with people back and forth, thought maybe he'd stay around the 40 to 50 range. And I'm the only reason I bring all that up is to say maybe Jay Gerbs was saying, listen, I'm going to live and die with 50%. If he comes in at 40, I'm overweight. If he comes in at 50, I'm at the field. And if he comes in at 60, I'm slightly underweight, but I got enough. That's really what that comes down to for me. Hubbard, Connor, those two in the same spot. We talked about it, same game. Barkley, 6%. Kyron Williams, not many on, got some leverage there. Jonathan Taylor, though, big stand yesterday. And just looking back, Richardson, like none. So talk about a move, right? When I've talked about this, Nades, and I'll let you hit on it, but I think you watched me going through some of my optimizer process, is if this, then that. If you're taking this stand and you're reviewing your stuff and saying, well, I don't have any Richardson, you don't have to. It's saying, but if you're not, what are you thinking happens? And if you have a story against this, then maybe you have a bunch of Tennessee defense. But if not, I'd be interested to see, let's see here, any Titans? No, not much at all. But you see where they took their stand. Go ahead, Nades. But, big time stand here. 18, almost 20% Jonathan Taylor in this spot.
Yeah, so the biggest thing I look at is, okay, yesterday going in the slate, who were the most chalky, kind of cheap quarterbacks? It was Penix, it was Anthony Richardson, right, and Caleb Williams. He was going in on Caleb Williams. He was off of Penix, and he was off of Anthony Richardson. So then he leveraged Anthony Richardson with Jonathan Taylor in his portfolio. It looked like he was off that Atlanta stuff, just with the unknowns in general, right? So I like what he did with his portfolio overall, because he was off those guys. So then he threw in and went way overweight on Bryce Young in that same range, right? And Aiden O'Connell, the two other cheap guys down there, because he already was playing Caleb Williams. Leveraged it with, right, the Brian Robinson. He was up there. So overall, I really like that portfolio. It looks like he was kind of under in general, right, on those Atlanta pieces. Leveraged Anthony Richardson stuff with the Jonathan Taylor, and then played the other two cheap quarterbacks, game environments that didn't work out. But that goes back to the portfolio management that you talk about all the time, right? It's not that you're just cutting Penix, right? Or you're just cutting Anthony Richardson. I'm just going to cut these guys. What does that do? If those guys aren't getting there, somebody else in those game environments, those guys are popular for a reason. People are attacking them for a reason, right? So I thought that was really nice, just looking at his portfolio in general.
Yeah, it all makes sense. Like, I think this is where people stop, but they recognize, okay, if I'm playing a bunch of Bryce Young, I probably have a bunch of his receivers and his running back and his overstacks and whatever it might be. Well, what do you know? I've got a bunch of Thielen and I've got a bunch of Coker. Let me guess. Oh, wait, there it is. He's got a bunch of McBride, right? Other side of that game. He's got a bunch of James Conner, Hubbard. So he was all over that game for a big portion of the portfolio, but then he was sliding in the other positions. Like Gibbs makes a ton of sense. Jonathan Taylor when not going to that spot. Chase Brown when not going to Burrow. When you go to wide receiver, what goes with the Chicago-Detroit stuff? The Keenan Allen, the DJ Moore, and he's my third highest owned quarterback as well. Go back over. Like, all this stuff is going to start to make sense. Big stand on Terry McLaurin because he's got those builds in the portfolio. But portfolio manipulation is something it's real, but I'm just putting a word to it and making up what it actually means. I think people just stop and say, okay, I've got these quarterbacks. It gives me this. Perfect. I got all my good quarterbacks with what they're supposed to have. But that's the correlation. And any good optimizer, Shiptimizer most certainly can help you with that over at ShipIt Nation, because we've got it set up with team stacks and with run backs and secondary stacks. And you'll get competitive lineups just by clicking a few buttons. But you still got to get it to what you want. It's still your money going in. And if you're saying, okay, I'm not going to be high on Anthony Richardson, but I don't think that game is trash. Like, I'm not going and loading up on the Titans D. I'll take whatever it gives me. Oh, it only gave me 0.7. Well, I actually think they're going to do something here. So guess how I'm going to get there? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get triple the field, almost double the field at least on Jonathan Taylor, depending on what I see him coming in at. But I see him projected for 8. Give me 10% over the field. He came in at 7.5. You got 18%. So you can manipulate. Look at the Brian Robinson. I know a lot of people would look at this and say, well, why does he have Brian Robinson so high? Again, look at what he's doing. If he's 20% Jaden Daniels, first of all, you can play them together. Second of all, when he loves the spot for Washington against Philly here and he's not on Jaden Daniels, he's saying, give me some Robinson to make up for that spot. And that's the real difference maker that it comes down to your setup. And this can be applied whether you have 20 lineups, 50 lineups, 100 lineups, 150, 450 uniques across 3 separate tournaments where you can play 150 in each and pick them differently. You can do whatever you want. It looks like Jay Gerbs runs the same set in both because, like I said, I saw his top lineup here was the 6th or 7th or 8th place, something over in the $20 Millie Maker. But these deep dives are how you get better as a player and find that stuff out. So before we go to the lineups that we're reviewing for members and people around the internet, Nades, going to go quick over to DFS Mastermind to talk about it because we're giving away the 33-33 ticket. If you haven't checked it out, not going to go through a whole spiel here. You can learn more. Just go to dfsmastermind.com. It's all training, review, application content, live cohort training, events, the roundtables, all that stuff, the interviews with other DFS players, both professional and casual. But you can check that out. I created it. It's my passion project that I wanted to put out there. It's a lot about my process. You can see the costs there. There still is the bonus. You get the full course. A lot of people have said this course alone is worth it. There is a special mystery bonus, which if you like bonus number 1, you're going to love bonus number 2. And then just going inside of it quick to talk about it, but this is inside the community. You get the course right away, so you have instant access to the My Map course. You can download the audio if you're on the go. December content schedule will flip soon to January content, but you can see a ton of these staggered slates coming up. My own optimizer process with Shiptimizer. That's what I use. You can apply it to any optimizer. Breaking down a couple more things upcoming this week. There's already 3 player interviews. My guy Kenny W1732, who sent me down to Nashville, where there was bonus content of the Fantasy Football World Championship. If you've never been to a live final and want to see what they're all about, that is there. Our guy Scarface from SHIPIT Nation, amazing dude, hopped on. I'm going to be breaking down how he balances a busy lifestyle with playing DFS. And then one of the most underrated players out there, he's joined us on this very show, NYG Fan 56. NFL Showdown, Top Pros Breakdown, Utical, McLovin, Fantasin, Peter Gibbons. I do the deep dive that we just did a little bit of with Jay Gerbs and showing that. And then my NFL 40K score over on FanDuel shows not just the score in the lineup review, but how I managed a portfolio of 5, and I turned it into 6 in this one, but it showed how I managed them together. And it wasn't a 5 or 6 max tournament. It was a 150 max with the best players in the world. So you'll see where I talk through how I'm handling it based on that. We also planned the outline, had a big live event that we did. So just going back up quick, all the strategy courses are here. My optimizer process covering loading the dry run, how I'm looking for leverage, different steps, and going the extra mile like we talked about. More optimizer runs than most will do to make sure you're getting exactly what you want and setting groups and adding your own personal touch. So if you need help using an optimizer, people said to me, if I could just see over your shoulder, that'd be extremely helpful. This is I think it's an hour and 17 minutes. An hour and 17 minutes. My guy, Billy Gableman, Stat ATL, went through how to attack the short slates. So with all these 2-gamers, Christmas, a 3-gamer this weekend, staggered, a lot more of these coming up throughout the playoffs. This covers all of that. Not going to go through it all, but there's the interviews. There's the case studies. This has the 40K lineup review if you want to go check that out. The Q&A, you can watch back the whole roundtable. We went live for an hour and 45 minutes. People on Zoom together. So join the community. Check it out. It's got everything there. The best pairing is with SHIPIT Nation. We talked about it already, how you can get in. BF50 gets you all access for half price. Or you get the single sport with rest of season, Super Bowl, through Super Bowl, with or without the optimizer. And then the golf deal is $100 off $299 or $100 off $349 and gets you all access right through the Super Bowl already. So if you're planning on being with us for golf, you'll get all that and more. All right. The winner, Nades. Before I go to the lineup that we're going to review, Jake Sanders is up. Sorry, Jake. You're my boy. We did a one-on-one call over at Mastermind, but you were not the winner. I got the winner this morning. I had a very randomized process using, everyone knows I'm a big family man, and I had it set up all in rows that I've been putting all the extra ballots in and everything, and there was over 500 names and emails in there, and it was set up, and I asked my daughter to pick a number between 1 and 30 for the rows. I asked my wife to pick a number within said row. I've been watching Beast Games, by the way, on Amazon, so I'm thinking about rows and the stuff with the Mr. Beast show that's on right now. But just to note it, then I had to involve my son, and he's the littlest one, and he's not going to pick the numbers and know it all exactly right now. But I said, do we go from the beginning or the end? And they all picked their numbers, and it was 23, 7, and top. It took us all the way back to the first day when people first signed up 1 month ago today. So thank you guys for all the support. The winner is, without further ado, Matt Higgins. So I think it's Higo _ something in the Discord, but Matt Higgins signed up on day one for the one-time membership. I don't know, Matt, at least as far as I know, but Matt, reach out. I'll send you an email after this. Matt Higgins is the winner of the 33-33 ticket and will be in the Ultimate Mega this week. Nades, you're in the community. You did not win either, but of note, I'm also doing a giveaway for SHIPIT Nation and DFS Mastermind from my own personal money. So I had 5 tickets into the $3,333 tournament coming up this Sunday. Hopefully I make some cash there because the giveaway involves having to win the cash first, but up to $100,000 because it's going to be 2.5% to SHIPIT Nation members. So if you're not in yet, join. If you're in, you're in. And 2.5% to DFS Mastermind members. If I win the 2 million, 5% is going to be 100,000, and it would be 50 grand to either side. And then we'll talk about how we're going to distribute it. It's not going to be a 50K payout straight, but just to note it, it is going to be up to 50,000 for either side. So all you have to do is be a member before this upcoming weekend. So it will end at lock on Sunday. And that's what it's going to be. December 29th at lock is when this ends. If you're a member at SHIPIT Nation or you're a member at DFS Mastermind, you're in the draw for this up to 2.5%. It will be 2.5% of my biggest cash, but I have to cash something first. So hopefully, Nades, all these close calls, 15 in the FanDuel Millie Maker last week, 38th or 43rd or something yesterday in the 555 on DraftKings. Maybe we're saving it all for the big one, my friend. Any thoughts on all that before we get to these lineup reviews?
Yeah, no, amazing. I mean, people talk about giving back all the time. I mean, you're literally giving back not out of company money. You're giving back out of your pocket, right? And your entries that you put hard-earned sweat and money and tears and grind and all that to get those 5 tickets. So hopefully you get one all the way to the top. My guy Billy in chat there, him and I have been talking about bourbon and that, and we share a lot of the same passions there. He said, when can we expect bourbon on the takedown? When we're reviewing my lineup. Up there on the big takedown. So that's the goal. Thought I had it last night, but hey, no one cares. Work harder. We'll get back. And these close calls, you've had them. We've all had them, and it feels like that's the story of the season for me this year, right? CeeDee Lamb 2 inches short of a touchdown ships me all the money last night, but hey, whatever. But yeah, no, I love that. Amazing. Congrats out there to Matt. Amazing community, and anybody out there who is like, why do I need this, right? I mean, not only that, just the community, the Discord alone of like-minded individuals out there. I mean, Billy, he went on and broke down the staggered slates. The first time I put that into process on Thanksgiving, I had 4 live lineups to win all the money. The very first day I put it in, talking about that portfolio. And it's just a mindset thing, right? Going into a slate, what's the most likely outcome? You're going to lose, right? So when you go into a slate, you set up your lineups and approach and different things like that. So amazing processes over there, and appreciate you doing what you're doing for the community and for the industry in general. Just giving behind the lens, right? How many other people are literally putting a camera on them when they're going through their optimizer process, right? Their secret sauce, if you will. Not many. I'll tell you, nobody, right? Nobody else out there.
There's no real secret to it in the sense of, I just think, again, not a lot of people want to do that, but it's more of, you're supposed to, the goal is people can pick up on different things that they can add to their process. Like you mentioned, Billy brought up the staggered process situation for staggered slates. That's incredible because nobody really understands it or thinks of that going in. It was just a mindset change for people, a bit of a game changer. And, I can do this. We've seen some really big success stories already. And like I said, when you pair SHIPIT Nation, the tools, the data, the stone, all the stuff we're talking about that I use myself when I'm showing my own process over there, it's the mention of using that stuff and applying it. Doesn't mean you'll do the exact same way, but if you can pick up anything, that's the goal. And Nades, you and Billy will have to close your ears, but you were talking about reviewing the lineups. Pour one out. You don't want to ever pour out good bourbon, but it's been that sort of season, right? For some of these close calls, I know you've had a bunch of them, and hopefully one gets over the hump for you. Here's one that almost got over the hump, getting back on track for Douglas, my boy, Jake Sanders. He's a voiceover actor or voiceover guy. Like, he goes in his little room and does his voice recording. So pretty cool. Don't know anybody else in the world that does that. But Nades, I'll let you break down his lineup. Looks like he was looking at a lot of the stuff we had over there with the Williams, Allen, Gibbs to start. He got in A-Chan with Gibbs instead of pivoting. Interesting and nice. I kind of like that for some leverage and another different way where most would be pivoting. He used both. Chase, McLeod, Okonkwo. Wandale, who I think was actually a really nice leverage play to Neighbors on this slate because he didn't have cheap value and you could just drop down. What if it was him in this type of game script? So give me your thoughts on this one. Another person out there that's pairing up SHIPIT Nation with DFS Mastermind. Looks good.
Yeah, I love this. The only thing I don't love is the one-off chase. We talked about that a bunch, right? Usually, if he needs at his price point, 8,300 or whatever he was yesterday on the slate with terrible value. I mean, guys like Malik Washington, right, were 12, 15% owned because there was no value, right? All the value was kind of in that mid-tier, right? So that's the only kind of thing off the top. I probably would have liked him more attached to Burrow and kind of upgrading the Ray McLeod or the Wandale Robinson secondary little mini there, which I don't hate. You just get out cheap in a little secondary correlated stack there. I don't hate that. I thought Wandale was actually a pretty decent play. I played him on the opposite side of Bijan a lot in my secondary stacks because I couldn't get up to Malik Neighbors, right? And it's also leverage off of Neighbors in that same game. Everybody that was playing a Giants piece was going to Neighbors a little bit Tracy. Nobody was really going to Wandale when there was no value and he was in that 4K range. So I do like that, but it just left you a little thin going to Chase, right? And that's where the snowflake came from with Ray, even though it was correlated. I do like that it was correlated and you use those two together, but just the Chase play kind of led you into having to land there, right? Because usually you're going to start with, most people start with their stack, right? What stack am I going to go with? The run back and then kind of fill in around it. And when you plugged in Chase with Achane, Gibbs, Allen and Moore, you kind of just, or he didn't have Moore here. He just went right. Caleb.
He went Allen with Gibbs. He went Caleb, Allen, Gibbs.
Yeah, so skinny. So yeah, I like that. So yeah, other than that, I mean, pretty decent. I like the Bills. Just the one-off D, right? You don't know who it's going to be. The running back DST correlation gets scary with teams like the Bills, right? When you got running quarterbacks that can rush for 2-3 touchdowns themselves. So I like that. And then the Chiga Kongwu play $100 less than Brenton Strange at way less ownership there.
So he's going to be mad because this is, again, I just look for this stuff and this is results oriented, but just looking at from, like you said, the Chase thing for sure. We've talked about a ton of times. I personally don't like it. Again, that's why the whole point you just brought up. It's not that I'm right. It's more of this is why I don't like it. It forced in a secondary stack, which I like Robinson as the leverage. So I love keeping that against Neighbors here, but I don't like that it means Robinson, Chig, and McLeod. So just real quick, an example, Nades. When you pull Chase, I actually want to pull Chase and McLeod. I want to keep Wandale because I really like Wandale there as a one-off piece and as a leverage to Neighbors. To me, that's clean. I want Chase out of there. I want McLeod out of there. There's really nothing for McLeod. I get it's part of Penix and it's a way to pick it up, but it's when you have to go to 3 punts, I don't love it. I didn't want to change his lineup too much, but I thought if you're on Chig and you're not on Richardson, what would happen if you just leave everything the same, take out Chase, McLeod, bring up Wandale, and then plug in, he's going to hate this, you plug in Jonathan Taylor, which makes a ton of sense. He's a secondary stack and you're not on the other spot. Do you know what you land on exactly? Which is incredible because it's also another pivot off of it's pivot and kind of leverage, kind of not because they both were popular, but you land on Brian Thomas Jr. and you score 241.6 enough to win even the $20 Millie Maker. So the good news, my man Jake, you're on the right track. You're building in a sharper way. This makes a ton of sense. That is obviously extremely results oriented, but I'm just saying the idea of the Wandale leverage and not playing a guy like Chase outside of it. Again, tons of sharp players play Chase outside of the stack. It's not wrong. I'm saying why I don't like it is because I think if he has the 40-point day, we often see Burrow lineups get there. There's a chance he gets to 40 and Burrow still only has 30 and Caleb still beats him. So it's not like it's the only way. I'm saying it's what it does to your lineup on top of that factor. There's a factor that Burrow does outscore it heavily on top of the fact that when you move off Chase and McLeod and just keep your leverage to Neighbors, you can start looking at other combos. I'm pretty sure a 2v2, Strange would not have worked with the Okonkwo there because then you would have had too much money at wide receiver. So if you're looking at okay, I'm not on Richardson, let me play Jonathan Taylor. Where do I land? you would have been like, holy shit, because you're not on Neighbors, you're on Wandale. You're not on you're what would it be, Nate? You're not on Strange, you're on Thomas Jr. So you've pivoted off and leveraged the Jacksonville tight end who's super popular for Thomas Jr. And Thomas Jr. is also a pivot to Neighbors, who you also have his leverage play built into the lineup. So, I mean, I love the build that you're on. I'm just saying when you see that stuff, that's when I'll spend a little bit more time on how you can look through it. All right, let's go to the next one. GK Pfeiffer, A. Rich was his lineup. He got the Wandale leverage in there. He played the no Tillman, let me get Judy. He got James Cook. I mean, there's a lot of leverage pieces in this lineup, but I'll let you take it away, Nate. Talk to us about this one.
Yeah, I was just going back to another secondary stack on the last one. I mean, Bijan and Josh Downs is the same as Jamar Chase and Ray McLeod, still correlated, still in the exact same spots. Right, Bijan and Josh Downs, you just land on a 4,900 piece. And I just threw Josh Downs in there to be correlated with Chig. But going into this one, James Conner, really good play. We already hit on him a ton. I really like that Wandale. That Wandale leverage there, because I mean Wandale's like their Swiss Army knife, right? Over there too. I mean, he just gets all the PPR points, so fits the DraftKings scoring. The Saquon Barkley, you knew people were stopping at Gibbs, right, on running back. That's as high as they were going. So going up all the way to Barkley, you can say what you want. I mean, people are saying, "Oh, he got there because Hurts." Well, I guess what? He got there in the first quarter. I mean, he had 110 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first quarter before Hurts was even injured, right? So Barkley could have literally shattered the slate with like a 50 spot yesterday, right? He didn't really do much the rest of the game, but you knew nobody was getting up to him. I mean, not many people were going up because people were stopping at Gibbs, HN, James Conner were kind of the highest people were going, or Chase Brown, right? But even Chase Brown got held super in check, and he's just direct leverage right off of Bijan as well. If people were going up, they were clicking Bijan over Saquon all day. So I like that a lot. The Judy play I thought was a little thin because DTR, right? No Jameis Winston there. So the Judy play, in my opinion, is a little thin, not results oriented that he got 4. But same thing with the Ray. I was going to bring up that last game, right? These quarterback switches, right? Ray was attached to Cousins, and it was the nature of Cousins, right? Loving the check down, loving the little dump off to Ray. New quarterback in there, Penix, right? He's got a cannon. He's going to throw. He's going to push the pace. Same thing with DTR. DTR is terrible quarterback, right? How does Judy get there? The long throws down the field, Jameis airing it out, right? So I thought that was pretty thin there. The James Cook, Buffalo D, I really like that a lot. Just avoiding the whole New England piece in general, outside game in Buffalo. Buffalo, really good team, so I like that correlation a lot. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I have. And I know the Adonai Mitchell play, right, attached to Richardson, getting off of Judy and going to like a Downs avoids kind of the Adonai Mitchell play. The Adonai Mitchell play was probably, how can I still get a piece attached to Anthony Richardson but have these other plays? The roster construction forced you into a guy like that. When you're plugging in a higher price Judy, you're plugging in a Barkley, you're plugging in a Connor, James Cook, you kind of land on that and you click Adonai, which I think is pretty thin in general. But Judy is what forced you into kind of clicking Adonai, I would assume here.
Yeah, and I think that was the Judy play is the tricky one because, again, it can always work out. There was a guy out, all of those factors, but you mentioned no Jameis being a factor, not sure if they could push him or whatnot. I was fine with Mitchell with Pierce out, and he's obviously attached to Richardson. So that one to me makes perfect sense. But like, you don't need Wandale. You're not interested in Penix. You're not interested in Bijan. You're playing Barkley instead. Like, it really wasn't anything you needed to set him up. I like him as a leverage play, and he's fine in that instance. But this combo pack here had to be close to something. Like, what for the one thing I'm saying for sure is, let me just
Judy was 6,700.
And Wandale was what? 41?
Wandale was 41.
So what are we at? 10-8?
10-8, yeah.
So 10-8. Let's just do this real quick.
So you're at 5,400 receivers, which puts you on like Keenan Allen. It puts you in that really, really good range.
I know exactly what it is. I just had to look it up. Yep, 10-8. Keenan Allen, Jamison Williams. You're not on Gibbs. My problem with this lineup is you're a SHIPIT Nation member as well, which we love to see. And I know you quite well from over the years, but just saying it, you skipped out on the Chicago-Detroit game, and it was a target game with big totals on both sides, huge on the stack rankings, solid. Talking about Do you have correlation? Yes. Do you have leverage? Yes. Could you be missing a piece to make it all work? And Judy Wandale, when you're not even on the Atlanta side of the game, works out exactly to those other two guys. And that's another what? So 17.2. And we're not going to spend this much time. I only got one more that we're going to go through anyway, but 17.2. Keep 17.2 in your mind, Nate. 17.2 and 29 minus 17.2 is 43.9 points for 210.24. And that's actually a fun way to do these. We haven't done these this way all season where you're kind of like seeing what it is. Again, is it results oriented? Of course, but just looking at it, always trying to take something away when we're reviewing it and how can we apply it. You skipped out on one of the best games of the slate. It's okay to do that. That's not a bad thing. It's just saying, if looking at this lineup and thinking, okay, if I'm going to go off of Gibbs and I'm going to move off all this other stuff, but you're not even in on Atlanta, you're not in on Burrow or something that would make these things move. They fit, they work, they had injury situations and leverage spots and things like that, but it easily could have just been get Jameson Williams and Keenan Allen and have a piece of that other game, and then the rest of it all really fits and makes perfect sense. And the fact you weren't on Atlanta, New York Giants would also make even more sense for Barkley instead of most had Robinson there. And anyway, 210 points. So just a note on that. All right. The last one, what do we got here? I think I'm going to go to this one, Spirit of Time, just because this one here is a $27 entry in a 207 person field. Said finished 41, basically min cash. Thoughts on the lineup, and have a look at this one, Nades. It looks a little bit, cleaner than some of the stuff we looked at, like as far as that, but it's also a lot of higher owned plays. Just in general, it's only a 207 person field, so I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so going in on the Caleb stuff, I like that. Laporta run back. So I did like that. I like that, attacking that good target game. We talk about how can you get different within a target game, something like that, right? Because 99% of people that are going in on that game have Gibbs, right, as the run back. So how do you get different? You throw in a Jameson Williams or you throw in a Laporta, right, to hopefully eat some of Gibbs' lunch. So I did like that there. The Malik Washington looks like a one-off, right? Not attached to anyone else. Don't love that a ton. I liked him as kind of a correlation with either like a Kittle or a Debo, but just the nature of kind of landing there. The T. Higgins.
We like him better as a one-off, but not.
Yeah. But I mean, his price is even coming up too, though. But yeah, I mean, I don't hate that. The James Conner, Bijan, really good options. Love those two a ton. Colts defense, fine. Jacoby Myers, kind of just as a one-off, I think is fine too. Can't be too results oriented. It is a lot of higher ownership, but again, it's a smaller field. So going back to building for your field size, you can get away with more of this chalk, if you will, in a smaller field. So definitely, for the most part, tailored his roster to the field that he's playing. So Dakota out there, I'm sure you've listened to these shows all season long, that you're following the tweets and replying there. So at least you're kind of building your lineup for the most part to the field size that you're playing. So I do like that a lot. But I just think the Malik Washington, Jacoby Meyer, Higgins, all like is just like one-offs out there. I feel like a little thin because in these smaller fields, you can over-correlate more, in my opinion. I learned that from Tambo, right? In the smaller field stuff, over-correlating actually does better for the most part than kind of that large field stuff where there's more variance, right? There's higher entries, there's the more one-offs, things like that. But outside of that, I mean, it was all solid plays on the field going in yesterday. It just didn't get there.
Yeah, I was trying to see on this one if there was other stuff, but just to like if he goes to Gibbs and more, he ends up around, Hunter Henry. So again, you weren't getting there, but just to note it, like the flip on yours, because we've done this for the rest, I'll do it for yours, was like if you go to take out Higgins and go to DJ Moore and then take out Myers and go to Gibbs and just run the similar stack to everybody else. Your ownership does, it's pretty similar. It goes up because of Gibbs, sure. But it's, and Henry's in there and all that. But just for the smaller field, it would have played. It projected about 6 points better. And it's still, a little bit more over-correlated, like you said. But you're using the good spots. One thing I like about what you're doing here is when you're going to Williams and Allen, you're not on DJ Moore. You're flipping it with Laporta instead of Gibbs. I love that. That's fine. And I like the Higgins one-off better than some of the other ones, and I'm fine with the, obviously Washington was a cheap value play, but that's one thing. I don't really love the cheap value one-off as a the cheap value play as a one-off, because then everybody sort of has the similar one.
Yeah, I like it attached more to like a Debo, right? Or something like that. Not results oriented, right? Even if Debo would have scored like 4 points yesterday, I still liked him more correlated to that, because Washington's the most popular value going into the slate yesterday. So how do you cut into that? You go to a guy that nobody's playing, right? Or like a Kittle.
You mentioned Kittle. Even I think on the show yesterday we talked about like Patrick Taylor with that little secondary. And again, that's why it's not results oriented. It didn't work out at all. But just saying that would be a way to cut into it. But yeah, if you did do a little bit different here. The other thing I will say is, like, again, I'm all for flipping the build. That's why this is not a negative. Just take it for what it's worth. But I also think like yesterday was, really nice field for 3 running backs, right? We had a ton of those guys that we like. It wasn't overall a ton of good. Like the pool was smaller, I thought, this week. I talked about this in the Slate plan at SHIPIT Nation. I thought there was less running backs to work with overall, but I thought what we had to work with was very strong, right? There was even builds I did. I didn't show it on here or talk about it, but like with a Rich and a couple indie guys with a Chig run back to allow me to get Gibbs as my 3rd running back. I had a lineup that did really well in the Millie Maker with like Bijan, Barkley, and Gibbs. And then a whole stack that made sense where if Anthony Richardson hit his ceiling, and it was very close up there. That was the one that people were texting me about that was winning the Millie at 194 or something, and it lost some points at the end. But the point being, didn't quite get there. But the note of like being in the right spots and thinking of the slate differently while going to a 4th wide receiver was definitely still different and obviously more than okay. I thought yesterday was a nice day to mix around these 3 running backs. And if you had Bijan, Connor, and Gibbs, you were in almost all the right places, and then we're able to move it around. That only would have got you to like 181 or something.
Yeah, another thing too, Jacoby $100 more than DJ Moore when you already got Caleb Williams, and Jacoby's picking up ownership and just getting a piece of the afternoon just to get a piece, right? Yeah. I think is a little thin too, right? In that spot, just throw him attached to your quarterback. How does Caleb Williams get there? He does have rushing upside, but for the most part, his target tree is super condensed. It's Keenan Allen, it's Rome Odunze, and it's DJ Moore. So if he's getting his ceiling on an 11-game slate, it's likely that at least one, for the most part, two guys are probably going to be needed to push him there. Not always, right? But you already know it's not like Jacoby Myers is a leverage piece. He's one of the most popular guys going in, especially in the afternoon slate. So it goes back to the FOMO, right? I struggle with this a lot in NHL and different things, right? Always wanting a piece of that late game, right? To push you up the leaderboards, right? It's not a guarantee. It's just kind of just a misconception, I think, in a lot of people's minds, is because they just hate to be done and then have other people kind of chasing them down, right? But
people hate the anti-sweat. That's exactly, you nailed it there. People hate the anti-sweat, and it's basketball too, right? NBA DFS, like,
they always want the late night hammer. They always want that because they don't want to be 4 hours, right, of games that they have nothing left and they're just sitting there waiting for people to chase them down, right? The whole piece is they still have to chase you down to get there, right? You're already there, right? You're there.
It's the exact same thing in sports betting. When nobody wants to bet on all these prop parlays, nobody ever takes the unders. You're allowed to take unders. You're allowed to overstack early and just let it sit there. You don't need but I always see it happen. No, you don't. You just remember when you see it. It's like that's part of it, right? They're never thinking about the times. I've had plenty of times where I've had to anti-sweat, especially in NBA, and it worked out just fine in my favor, and you're loving it because you're like, holy shit, this is getting close. And then that person gets checked out. You're like, it's a blowout. Just sit them. And then finally, with 4 minutes left, they bring in the backups, and you've won because there's no sweat behind you anymore. And that's a different sweat for sure, but it happens. And it's no different in NFL. You can get there with an early-only lineup and not need someone. But again, some of these slates do have really good afternoon games. So I don't know the overall math on the sample size. I just know it most certainly is possible, or at least limited and stuff like that. But I think in this one, who knows if they were building it in just for that. But of note, you don't have to build it in. So great call out, Nades. Anything else from you, man, before we get out of here, this final takedown breakdown of the season?
No, just going back to the PGA content out there. If you guys aren't PGA people, it's one of our best sports over here at the Nation. And every single weekend there's an event. You have at least 5 slates to play. You have the main slate and 4 showdowns that come with it. And our showdown, I'll put our showdown content up against anyone out there. Most people don't even have showdown content, or they just regurgitate the main slate content overall, our team over here grinds the showdown, changes it for the weather, changes it for how the golfers are playing in the first couple rounds and things like that. One of the most profitable sports. It's a fun sweat. Not a lot of people love it because it is a 4-day sweat. But even if you don't love the 4-day, to have your entries tied up for 4 days, play the showdowns, right? Massive contest out there, especially for the majors, but even the non-majors out there, right? There's tons of money to be made in the PGA streets, and get in there and you get the rest of the NFL. All the playoffs, which are very profitable, all these short slates for no additional cost there.
Yeah, you gotta have the tools to start things off. That's the key, right? That's how we're doing all this stuff. That's how we're getting to it. That's how we're knowing what others are doing. That's how we're beating these fields. So, like you said, all access free through Super Bowl if you get one of those PGA annual packages, and then you get the entire PGA season. So check that out. Ton of good stuff coming up there. You talked about all that and more. It's all the sports that we've got. If you get the deal with Shiptimizer, you get that added in as well. So you have your own optimizer. So realistically, best deal you can get when it comes to that. It's going to be all of that. We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching this throughout the season. We'll be back next year. Nades and myself will have a ton of other content for you guys covered. And in just 45 minutes, Hoop, Title, and myself will be back to break down Green Bay and the Saints. It's a tricky one. Green Bay 14-point favorites. So got to talk about ways to get different there. But for Nades, myself, ToeTagginTambo, let's ship it.